Welcome to Creators Cafe. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. I'm a performer, performance coach, and multi-hyphenate creator. I'm going to be bringing you conversations with some of my favorite creators where we talk about the sublime and the specifics of the creative journey. So grab a drink, get cozy. Let's go. My guest, Amy Kersten, is an actor, writer, editor, producer, and director. Amy spent the last decade developing multiple digital series, including Lady Parts Justice, run by The Daily Show creator Liz Winstead, and 3 seasons of the award-winning digital series Hot Mess. Amy wrote, produced, and starred in an independent pilot, In Case of Emergency, which was directed by Soma Helmi, and in partnership with Third Law Films, which is now available on Amazon Prime. Amy has worked on various feature films, including Sandy Wexler, starring Adam Sandler, The Spy Who Dumped Me, starring Kate McKinnon, and The Week Of, directed by Robert Smigel. Amy starred as an actor in Shanghai, in Venus and Fur, and 39 Steps. She wrote her first feature-length screenplay, A Woman Abroad, about her experience there, and recently even got to film a scene from her feature at the historic Peace Hotel in Shanghai. Please enjoy my worldwide conversation with the amazing, multi-passionate Amy Kersten. Welcome to Creators Cafe, Amy Kersten.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jazz.
Cheers. And what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking an oat milk latte.
Nice.
It's delicious. Iced cold because it's hot out already.
Yeah, exactly. It really felt like summer in LA today for the first time, and there was like people out in pretty dresses and walking dogs, and it was really lovely.
I feel like the May gray finally went away.
Finally, yeah, mid-June.
Yes.
We're here finally.
Yes.
I have an iced latte. These are from Groundworks in Larchmont, actually.
Oh, I love Larchmont.
Yeah, I went to get. It's my birthday weekend.
Happy birthday!
Thank you. And so I went to get a. Levain is there, the bakery.
Oh, yes, like in New York, and you see the line out the door. It's really the cookies. The cookies are what's causing traffic. That's the issue.
I went to get a cookie.
So proud of you. That's what you had for breakfast?
That's what I had for lunch. Yeah, that was
so
like
proud.
Yes, it was. I was like, that's what my day is today. I went to SAG and did the on-camera open house.
Wonderful.
Thing there.
That's so neat.
It's a cool resource that I didn't know about. And then I went and took myself for a cookie.
This is a commercial for Levain Bakery's cookies. They are no joke.
So
they are no joke. There's a line, but it's worth it.
That's like my death row last meal
is a Levain cookie.
Like, I feel like there could be other things there as well.
I mean,
but
there's always a line. In New York and LA, there's always a line.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, so good.
So yummy.
So how do you think about yourself as a creator?
As a creator, this is such a fun question. I feel like you always, when people like me, like you freeze at parties, you're like, what answer do you need to hear right now in order for me to maybe get a job?
Yeah.
Which is so sad.
But it's so real.
It's so real.
Yeah.
So I would say I am a filmmaker. And, but, you know, I think a lot of people say storyteller, but that to me feels like a little woo-woo and not practical. So I think I'm a filmmaker, practically speaking. I would say I love theater as an art form, but I wouldn't say it's my career. It was something that I did do and I might do in the future for creative expression, but it doesn't really, I don't think it's something I'm doing professionally ever. You know, I think filmmaking has sucked me in. But in all aspects of filmmaking, I am a writer, I'm an actor, I direct now the things that I write because I also edit those things. So I came into storytelling from like both ends.
Yes.
And it has crafted how I tell stories and how I help other people tell stories. So I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
Excellent. So I love that we have this weird connection where we're chasing each other across the country.
And we just added up, it's been 10 years.
Yes.
Which is like not okay, but so beautiful.
So
also.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes.
Yeah. So my husband, Kyle, his best friend from high school, Alex, is married to, who was your roommate, Jimmy?
My roommate, Jimmy. I met Jimmy at the Williamstown Theater Festival in 2007. We became instant, just soulmates.
Yes.
And we were roommates when he met Alex through a proximity app. And then, so he was always like, I think at their wedding, they were like, if Jim hadn't moved into Amy's living room, because we were scrappy then, he wouldn't have met Alex because Alex was living in Brooklyn at the time.
Oh, you're the connector.
I take partial credit for renting my living room to Jim at a time we both needed cash. There you go.
That's so perfect.
So poverty, honestly, does have a lot of happy endings, you guys.
It just worked out.
It worked out so well, and that's how we came into each other's lives.
I'm so glad.
Yes.
And now we both did the New York thing.
Yes.
And
Don't need to do that again?
Nope. So happy I did it. Glad to be here.
I still have my 212 cell phone number that I just keep for like street cred.
I have 646.
Oh my God.
I have that's so great.
Yes. Keep it.
And people comment all the time.
All the time.
This week I got somebody say, "Oh, New York,
It's
where?"
Honestly, it's my Bitcoin. I'm going to sell it someday for so much money because it's all I have for retirement. Is my phone number from New York City. Yes.
I mean, but somebody's going to buy it.
So because they're out, because you don't know, it's like those numbers ran out for cell phones.
Yeah.
Especially the 212, the landlines with 646, which was the OG cell phone. So it's like people in New York want them. It's kind of a weird status symbol.
Yes. Okay. So I know you from New York.
Yes.
But now we've both been out here for a decade.
Yeah.
Ish. Getting on it.
Yeah. I'm coming up, I guess, on 8 years.
8 years. Congratulations.
Which is wild.
Yeah. LA time is like unlike any other time.
Because when you're happy, time passes quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, continue.
Yep. No more comments needed. Yes, good. I'm so glad. So not everyone is able to make that kind of transition from the professional theater world to the film and TV world.
Yeah.
What was your first in, and what did that look like?
So actually, I got my SAG card when I was very young, around like 6 or 7.
Whoa.
A talent scout came to my hometown in Kansas City and was scouting kids for a commercial camp that then kind of fed kids through the system in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so it was a crazy thing where like I wrote my own monologue for this weird showcase. I don't know what was in my head at the time. And then I got a commercial agent and I booked a couple commercials in New York. And then so that got me into like, and that was the very first time I think as a kid I'd self-actualized as a younger sibling. Like I was always kind of in my sister's shadow because she had this wonderful voice and could like sing at the age of 3. And so I think that was just the very first time that I self-actualized was actually on camera. Like all of a sudden I was being rewarded as a kid for something. So I did do a monologue in a theater setting, but it led to TV and film where that really... So then I came back to Kansas City and I started doing theater there. But strangely enough, when I really look back on my life, I was like being on camera was always first. And then writing my own work also came out of that. So the funny thing is I was like, oh, you look back on your life and it is kind of all sort of scripted in a weird way.
It does actually make sense. Like all the breadcrumbs were there already.
Yes, but you don't really train in film and TV. You train in theater thinking that theater will lead to film and TV, which I don't actually think is true anymore. But the narratives we were being fed back then that you should get a BFA in theater. And so I did theater in high school and local theater in Kansas City while auditioning for TV and film stuff up till a certain age. And then I wanted to go to school in New York because that's where I had my first self-actualization experience. That was sort of the Oz for me as a Kansas girl.
Yeah.
And I thought I would do theater that would lead to TV and film. But ultimately, I realized theater was not, for a bunch of reasons about New York, theater, I was not progressing as a theater person in a way that was satisfying to me. But I kept getting cast in like web series. So... And I was SAG, so I was working on set as a background actor. So I would get like featured background parts where I got to get paid to sit around for 12 hours a day with nothing to do. And I had gotten a settlement from an accident where a television had fallen on my head at work, which is the whole crazy other story. There's a podcast about that somewhere. Anyway, so what happened? So I basically knew I had some money coming. And I had been cast in a web series that was not what I wanted to do, but the DP and I bonded. And so then I was like, hey, I think I want to get a camera and shoot my own web series. And this is like 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
So this is before DSLR cameras had come out.
Yeah.
And he said, why don't I shoot it for you for free? And I was like, as opposed to you buying a camera, because I don't think it's going to turn out well. And I think Ken just saw in me a smarter person to hang out with.
Yeah.
And was like, why not give this woman a chance and give her a day of footage and see what she does with it? And ultimately, he just handed me the footage. And so he was the one that did the shots. He said, you need a wide, you need a medium, and you need a close-up. So he's handed me this footage, and it was mostly me acting on camera with my roommate, Mary, who later would be in case of emergency with me.
Yes.
Who also knows Jim and knows that. I mean, everyone knows everyone.
Yes.
Anyway, so he just handed me the footage and said, I think you can figure this out. And I'm so grateful for him. It's like the smallest act that this person did. He probably didn't even think about it that much. But like that set the course for like, honestly, the rest of my life. Wow. Because then I would go sit on set in background doing nothing, like movies like Margin Call, where I was, I'm just sitting there for hours.
Yes.
And I taught myself to edit in iMovie with these shots that he'd given me. And I was like, oh, you start with a wide and then you go close up. And then I also taught myself on camera acting in that process by watching my raw and cutting it and going, if I'd said that line faster, this would all work much better.
Wow.
And so I was teaching myself on camera acting as an editor. And so that started with this web series called Hot Mess.
Yes.
That ultimately had 3 seasons. We're the first web series on Kickstarter because this was a long time ago. And then the DSLRs and Final Cut X came out, and we really became a creators industry to start making stuff.
Yes.
And then from there, I started editing other people's content or getting cast in things, and being able to do my own post-production led to me being able to create a lot more than the average person because I didn't need to raise money for post.
Wow.
And so and there's a whole other thing about how I got like my first TV auditions from this skill set as well and whatever, but that's kind of how it all got started.
Wow, I love that because that's definitely been a hole for me, is that over the years I realized I was making things, but then even if I was working with an editor, if it didn't go the way I wanted, they moved on, or they lost the footage, or they gave it to me and said, this is the best I can do.
I made a career out of triaging those situations, especially for women. So my name started to get passed around town in New York and in LA when I got here, did you only get so far in post? Amy Kersten will fix it for you. Because I'd gotten myself in so many pickles in post.
Yes.
And I realized that women were not being heard by their editors. Often were men, and not men with the top-notch social skills, because that's not really their job. Their job is to sit in front of a computer and do their thing, and it's a very technical job.
Yeah.
But I was like, there's a dialogue here that needs to be happening for women. They know what they want. They don't know the language to get what they want, and they don't know what's possible with their raw footage.
Yes.
And so I really love that skill.
I wish I had talked to you, because I was treated pretty poorly actually by people that were, either I was paid or they offered to do X and did a third of that and were mean to me. And I just didn't, at that point, I didn't have the language to kind of push back or ask for exactly what I needed. And there's so many projects, I'm sure, that are just sitting in a file on an SD card somewhere in LA.
I mean, so many women, raise $20,000 on Kickstarter and do it, and then they can't get it across the finish line, and it's through no fault of their own. It's people quoting them too low of prices and then having to move on or whatever. And I just think, I even work with actors now. One of my side hustles is teaching. I do this thing with actors where we film footage for their reels, but it's treated like a master class where they weigh in on the script, and then we shoot like a TV show would shoot. So not a ton of time, 2 takes max. But then they sit with me in the edit. That's where I just came from. And so we sit and we watch my director's cut, and then we watch the raw footage, and we have a conversation together about what should the final cut be and how should it work. And some people get very technical, and they say, is there any way that I can merge these 2 takes? And I said, yeah, what we do is we'd go back to the wide, then we come back here. But if we pick up here, your hand gesture won't seem out of continuity. And they said, I like that. What about this? And so as soon as an actor starts learning the rules of cutting, their brain starts to go, I know how to make the movie I want. Wow. And so I do think that I wish that this is something that actors could learn more, because you'd be surprised how much it affects your performance on the day and also the final product. And if you're paying for it, you're the producer and you should get final cut.
Yes.
Done.
Oh, wow.
Sorry. Well, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
I needed that TED Talk. So for one, welcome as well.
yes. And so I do think, it's not exactly a career, but it's a passion of mine to empower creatives to understand how post-production affects their story and how to get the story they wanted to tell.
And I think there's so many people who were maybe trained in theater where the focus is so much on acting, but then want to work in film and TV, where the power really of finishing the story lies in the editor's hands.
Oh my gosh, so much.
Yeah.
And you don't realize what you're giving up when you hand over your raw footage.
Yes.
It's hard. But it's, a lot of filmmakers came up as editors first, and that makes a really good director.
Yes.
So if an actor wants to direct their own project, I say edit something first. If you want to direct your own feature, go right ahead. You're the master storyteller, but make a short film and you have to cut it. and then you will learn how to direct a feature. But until you do that, you don't know how to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you just see so much more once you've done that.
Well, you also just shoot efficiently.
Yes.
You're not feeling like maybe this is the shot I need. You actually start to just know in your head, like I'm cutting on the day when I'm
shooting for the edit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have a budget because you don't have a budget.
Right.
So it's the cheapest way to do it, you guys.
Yeah. So did you edit Hot Mess then?
Yes. That was the first thing I edited.
Oh,
so
wow.
so that when Ken shot the first episode. So
yes.
if you want to go deep in the archives, there's an episode where I climb a fire escape in like a cocktail dress, and I have to break into my own apartment because I think I've locked myself out.
Yeah.
And then I crawl in my own window, and then I go to the front door and I open the front door and I pick up the jacket, which I've shed in the heat of passion to go, climb my own fire escape. And I pick up the jacket and you hear the keys. So I had the keys on me the whole time. So I climbed my fire escape for no reason. Did that actually happen? Yes. So that was like the pilot episode of Hot Mess. I wanted to kind of be like a Buster Keaton black and white movie. Yes. So I did it as a silent film and I put in little titles. That was the first episode. And then the second episode is about when I got robbed, and I didn't know I got robbed because the place was so messy. And Mary, my roommate at the time, she was the first other actor in Hot Mess, Mary Catherine Greenawalt, who's a wonderful actress. Go watch her movie online. It's called Hudson. It's amazing. Pay the $3. Hudson's incredible. I'm a voiceover in it. Anyway.
Nice. I can link that in the show notes.
Yeah. So she actually is, she's already produced her first feature.
Wow.
But the first thing she made, and one of my favorite compliments is she was in an episode in season 2. I loved writing for her. I still do. And I got to watch her watch one of my early cuts, and she's like, I've never laughed at myself on camera before. And I was like, the best compliment I could ever receive.
Oh, that
hit
hits
me
so hard.
Happy. So Mary's like true north for me.
And she is your co-star in Case of Emergency.
So we made In Case of Emergency together.
Okay.
So she brought me the director, Soma Helmi, also shout out to Soma, and basically Soma wanted to direct something comedic, and she was like, well, Amy's a good comedic writer. And so the three of us came up with the idea of In Case of Emergency in our shared living room at the time. We've been roommates 3 times. So we were roommates in our early 20s in New York, our late 20s in New York, and then our early 30s in LA.
Wow.
So we both would always find each other. We're very different people, but at the bottom of each of our, whenever we were at the bottom of our emotional life sometimes, but often just financial life, we would live together. So before Jimmy moved in my living room, Mary lived in my living room in Brooklyn.
Wow.
So it was a 1-bedroom, but it was her studio, my 1-bedroom. We had like a curtain. It was so pathetic. Whatever. Anyway, so Mary and I made In Case of Emergency together out here.
Yes.
And it was through our connections that we just kept... This is one of the things I wanted to share is I was like, we just started to make it.
Yes.
And I was like, Soma's like, well, I'll just shoot it on my like little Canon. And then I wrote it, and then we were like, well, where could we shoot? What locations do we have? Because we wanted to make it about 2 women that are become each other's medical emergency contacts. Because after a certain time, if you don't have a significant other, your mother is not the best person to list as your medical emergency contact for many reasons.
Yes.
So the scene opens in a women's health clinic, and she has to list her emergency contact. And so she was like, fine, I'll write this random woman down. I'm living with now because of the plot of the thing. And it was Mary. And Mary and I were each other's emergency contacts for like 10 years. Wow. Yeah. Whenever we're not with a partner that would make sense, we just list each other.
Exactly.
And I think it's really about heroic female friendship and how we often the idea of being rescued and like someone coming to your rescue, which I think is a true narrative, but often it's going to be a best friend. It's not going to be, this man you're waiting to rescue you. Like your hero is already in your story, and it's usually she's sitting right next to you on the couch.
I love that. I've read more just kind of traditional romance novels, like rom-com kind of things and rom-com films recently. And I was struck recently by the idea that like the hero is usually the best friend.
Yes.
Actually,
it's actually the best friend.
It's actually the best friend that we all want. That person that you just call when you're the true hot mess.
Exactly. Yeah. And very much Case of Emergency came out of Hot Mess if I was just adapting true hot mess stories. And I was like, Mary and I have been a hot mess together so many times.
Yeah.
And so the pilot version of that, which I would love to sell, goes back and it has these girls living together in their early 20s, their late 20s, and then you pick up the show in their early 30s.
Yes.
Or I also did a version of the show where I wanted 3 different pairs of best friends that constantly rescue each other. And so you get some different cultural backgrounds, some different stuff, and then we bounce into each story. But I've always wanted to make a TV show based on true stories, and like we collect true stories and they weave their way into a plot of reoccurring characters. I still want to make that show someday. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But I'm really passionate about like creative adaptation of a true story.
Yeah.
But not just telling it, but like weaving true stories in, and then maybe having the talking heads of the people that actually happened to appear at the end and say, no, that actually happened. You know, we were in the White House, and you know what I mean? Like, she knocked over a statue and we had to like sneak out the back. Like, I want that, you know,
the director's cut where you get the behind the scenes.
I love the idea of seeing the real people tell the story, and then the audience gets to then creatively see how it got woven into the scripted fiction version.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a longer conversation. But in case of emergency, what I wanted to say on here is that what made that possible, and you can go watch it on Amazon. It might be $1 now. It used to be free on Amazon Prime. Sorry, I didn't make that choice. I'll pay you $1 if you watch it. First 5 people. So Soma and Mary and I were like, let's make this cool script about Amy and Mary's wacky relationship. And we had the house we're living in as a location. And we also used to get our water from this lady down the block called the Water Plant. And we were like, well, Leslie would let us shoot in there. So there's 2 locations. We can be in a back alley. That's 3. And I was like, we need a women's health clinic. And I happened to be working at Happy Madison at the time, Adam Sandler's company, in post-production. I was like an assistant. And I said, honestly, they're in this weird post-production office in Santa Monica. The lobby looks like a women's health clinic.
I watched it, and it completely does.
That is the old post-production offices for Happy Madison. They were cutting, I don't know, I guess we're probably cutting the wedding, what is it called? The week of, or Sandy Wexler. One of those movies was being edited there. And Happy Madison was so kind to me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not of that world, you know, but they were such a sweet family. They were so kind to me. And so when I said, can I come with my friends on the weekend and turn the office into a women's health clinic and shoot this thing? They were like, yeah, it's fine, Amy. Just, you know, lock the doors when you're done. So then we cast this one guy and said, who is going to film this? And we said, oh, we don't have a DP. We're just going to do it ourselves. And he said, my friend Alicia would do it. And so then we met with Alicia, and I said, oh, Happy Madison is giving us a location. And she goes, that's really cool. I could bring some of my people in. So Alicia Robbins filmed it for us for free because she happened to be between projects. And so, again, I'm like, and her company, Third Law, essentially produced it with us and put their name on it. And then Alicia would go on to, like, DP, Grey's Anatomy, and Bridgerton. But it's all because...
That's incredible.
So I just asked Happy Madison to let me shoot on there on Saturday morning, but then that looked really cool to an outsider coming in that I had scored that location, even though I was nobody there.
Yeah.
And Soma was this like up and coming cool director, and so she looked cool.
Yeah.
So by just sort of starting to get your ducks in a row, you'd be surprised how cool that looks to somebody from the outside who could add to your project.
Yeah.
And so I just want to share that. It's like, what resources do you have?
Yes.
Just put them together and see who else that draws in, and you'd be amazed what you can do with no budget.
That's incredible.
That's my big pitch.
I love the idea that resources does not equal money.
No, it doesn't. It's friendships.
Yeah.
Because I think the real currency in Hollywood is relationship.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you can get money from, you know, a dentist in Wyoming, but somebody's uncle that like believes in you, you know what I mean? Like that's going to matter. That's going to matter more than how much you could pay anybody. A favor is always worth more than what you could have paid for it for like 1,000 reasons. And then if you do pay for something, you build relationship inside that. And I can, you know, tell a story about that in a little bit too if there's time. But like, I've just found that everyone's like, I'm really bad at raising money, but I'm really good at getting stuff made. And so I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like down the road. But also, I will say in this climate, like right now, the industry is very slow in LA, and we're all just bartering like crazy.
Yes.
Like I met with the camera guy who's like, listen, I might need some editing for my reel. And I was like, I need some lenses. He's like, let's swap. I'm ADing a friend's thing, so she'll do a casting deal on one of my things. We are all bartering like crazy because we're like, we need to stop begging for money from people that are not willing to give it and don't spend it properly, and just start making art with it. We don't need them to make art. They've convinced us that we need them to like pay them so that they can pay us so that we can pay you. And I was like, or we just trade.
Yeah, we just make it together and make it work.
So I think we're in a barter stage right now.
or just like we're like reinventing what the model looks like from the inside.
Yeah.
Which is in some ways exciting, as depressing and scary as it is. It's also exciting.
It is exciting, and I think, you know, that being in control is the most important thing. It's not being funded, in my opinion. Yeah.
Are you ready to be confident and comfortable in front of a camera? Well, my name is Jessica Payne, and I would love to help you. I'm an actor, acting coach, and the host of the Creators Cafe video podcast. I have helped thousands of people to learn the skills of a Hollywood actor to be more comfortable in their body, voice, and mindset whenever you press record. So if you're an entrepreneur, a business person who needs to be in front of the camera, or you want to get into digital content creation, I would love to offer you one-on-one on-camera performance coaching so that you feel like when you press record, you can be your best self. Check out the link below for more details, and I can't wait to work with you. Let's have fun together. So one of the things you were talking about was when you are creating something to have that control, you like to write the story and see it through the whole process. And I love how you combine that with your love of fiction based on truth in A Woman Abroad.
Oh, thank you. So,
segue. So I love how those through lines kind of combine in this huge, beautiful project.
Thank you.
So can you talk about what that project is and where it is?
Thank you. Yeah. So it's my first feature-length script that I started in around 2016, and we got to our first draft about 2018, and then started crafting it more and whatever. But it's inspired by. I lived in Shanghai. I did some theater in Shanghai in 2015 and 2016. So I lived in Shanghai. I did a production of Venus and Fur for you theater geeks out there, and then I did a production of 39 Steps in Shanghai.
So fun.
Beyond fun. So fun. I was living with Jimmy during Venus and Fur. It was glorious. So anyway, so while I was there, I met tour guide / historian from the UK, but it was fluent in Mandarin, who was really into really wanted to become a filmmaker, and ultimately he has. His name is Daniel Newman. He makes wonderful films. Check him out. And he was like, he met me and he's like, you remind me of Emily Hahn. And I was like, who's that? You should make a movie about her. And I was like, who is that? And he's like, well, she came to China in the 1930s. And I was like, and he's like, she's a very naughty girl and she did lots of naughty things. And when I went to Shanghai, I was very clinically depressed at the time. My 20s had ended up kind of on a down note, and my 30s hadn't really gotten started, and I felt very adrift in my life. I was a very ambitious person who couldn't make anything of myself. And I was like, I guess I'm a failure and I don't know why. There's a line in the script where it goes, it's like, if my life were a plant, I would water it and shit, and it would still die, and everyone would know why it died but me, but they wouldn't tell me, because they'd just be like, oh my God, you're so good with plants. You know what I mean? And it's just like, that's what I felt. I really was like, I don't know how to fix my life, and I work really hard, and it's amounted to nothing. And that was a really scary time. And so I went to Shanghai, and my entire world did a 180, and it was like this magical world where all of a sudden men weren't rejecting me. They were pursuing me, and they all had accents. They were handsome. And I was like, this is not like New York City. And then also I was on the covers of magazines, and I was in the play of my dreams, and I was in Asia. So this upside down world, and everything was affordable. Where in New York, I couldn't afford a cab, and in Shanghai, a cab was $1. So it was this very upside down world. And then I started reading about Emily Hahn, this prolific writer from the 1930s that was she wrote for the New Yorker for something like 60 years. She's written 65 books, traveled the world alone, did all this really cool stuff, and went to Shanghai and from New York in a similar state. And then Shanghai also was a blossoming place for her. And I thought, oh, there's a movie here. And I was like, it's like Julia and Julia, but slutty and in Asia. Let's go. And that's still the elevator pitch to this day.
That is a fantastic elevator pitch.
It works. I mean, and honestly, it's 2 floors and you're done. Even if they're going to the 3rd floor, you got them. It's great.
And they're going to remember it forever.
Forever. So the movie is, I tried to get the life rights, and the family unfortunately decided to give them to men, trying to make her life story as a biopic series, which it deserves to be that, but they've yet to make it. And I go, if you'd given them to me, we could have already made the movie by now. It's fine. Pursuing life rights is rough. But ultimately, I was inspired by, I consumed her writing. I just consumed her life story. And also by consuming her out of 2016 into my transition to LA, seeing my life through her lens, it pivoted my view of my own life. That I was I loved that my life was mirroring hers in any way, shape, or form. I was just thrilled, and I got to see where her life went because of that. And it really just made me so. I was like, I'm incredibly grateful for the freedom that my failures made possible.
Wow.
And I still stand in that today, many years later. So anyway, I wrote the movie, and then I couldn't get the life rights, so I started journaling in her voice. I wake up every morning, play the same playlist, and channel her, which is kind of woo-woo, but it's some of the most beautiful writing I've ever done. So anything that you read in the script that's voiceover, that's stuff I wrote, but I wrote sort of channeling her in character inspired by Emily Hahn. So it's all original, and it's some of my favorite things I've ever written.
It's so beautiful, and I love how it has such a confident, distinct voice.
Yeah.
So hearing the backstory gives me chills.
Isn't it? Oh, good, I saw that. It's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Emily's spirit is still in this project,
Wow,
and I
absolutely.
hope her biopic gets made someday. I'd love to direct it. God, if it ever happens, but. In the meantime, I wanted to be part of her legacy, and this is my way of doing it, because I do think she's a very cinematic character and feminist character that I really want people to find out about her through this project. That's my highest goal. And also, it's a love letter to Shanghai, which China, over here, people just hear China and it's this monolith of culture, and that's just completely not what China is at all. And, obviously we look at China and like human rights violations and communism and censorship, and we go, oh, I don't know, but like that's what gets reported to us. A country is so much more than that. A country is its people, it's its history, and Chinese history is actually fascinating and so different from ours. And in a lot of ways, there's like deep feminist lessons in Chinese history that we don't know. So I just started to fall in love with like moving beyond like the China that America sees on the news. And I was like, I just want to tell a story about a love letter to Shanghai and some Chinese history, with the aid of Daniel Newman, by the way, my wonderful, consulting, producing partner. So that's how you got the script that you read. And we have just come back from Shanghai. I raised enough money through a nonprofit, bless them, Clutch Productions, they're wonderful, and my producing partner, Margaret, to go shoot a key piece in China in this historic hotel, the Peace Hotel, the Fairmont Peace Hotel. And that is a hotel where Emily Hahn actually stayed.
It's incredible, and I loved watching your looking at your pitch deck and seeing the pictures of you filming. And I actually got to perform in Shanghai.
No way!
Yes, I was.
So you know.
So I know, and I was in Shanghai for 10 days performing.
Oh,
and
wonderful!
Yeah, and so it's such a special, really cosmopolitan, really interesting city.
Yeah.
So kind of getting to revisit it through your eyes and through her eyes was really fascinating.
Oh, that's so cool! I had no idea you'd been. So you get it. It's such a magical place.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah, and I had no idea of her as a person.
Yeah.
And so just hearing her history was really inspiring.
That's so, I love that. So, and I remember when I went there for a research trip in 2018, and I found her first apartment. And I figured out the maps. I was like, this street used to be named this street, and so this must have been the street, and it was in the red light district, so it was here. And I found her first apartment, and so I was like, this is where this person actually lived when she was here. And I got really emotional. Like, I got really, really emotional. That ultimately then I was like, okay, something like this goes in the script, which then pivoted that midpoint of the movie where she's at this hotel, and it's really special. And so the hotel, God love them. We do not have a big budget. And we were like, we can do this, basically. And they said, we would like to have you. We really want to have you do this, and we're going to support you. So the hotel made this tiny shoot possible, this huge set piece, this one of the most beautiful Tiffany skylights in the world we filmed underneath. And I'm just so grateful to those people and Mike, our contact. We kicked off the movie in a wonderful way. And so now we're producing that sequence. It's got a VFX element to it. And the idea is we can show that to investors and produce the next phase of the movie, which we could shoot a significant portion of the movie for not a huge price point for about a week. And then I'm the editor, so then I can cut those sequences and show those to more A-list talent to come on board.
Interesting.
Or investors. And so the last 3 movies that have won the John Cassavetes Award have done this. They have made the movies, and like, whoa, there's, I guess, multiple people win the award every year, or they're nominated, but these films did this, and I was like, this is a great idea. Then you make the movie in chunks and present early edits to investors or talent, and then people get on board.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I'm an editor, so let's do this.
Wow.
So we're trying to use this sequence from Shanghai to produce another week of shooting with a child actor in it, and then use those scenes to then try to get bigger names and make the movie for still under $1 million, but it's it's just my whole world. So yeah.
Wow. And it's I like that it's got the epic, beautiful travel side to it, and the very personal hot mess roots to it, and your connection to her in history, and also your connection to kind of the guys that see you differently. Subplot is just it's amazing.
I'm so glad you like it. Everyone's like, so the promiscuity, and I was like, it goes in the log line. I really, and that's all true. Like all that stuff. all those scenes in the bars, that's all straight from headlines, ripped from the headlines. It was a wild time. And for a woman whose ego was literally completely on empty, it was a remarkable experience.
Well,
and
it's so funny to travel as a woman because the same package going different places is received so wildly differently.
I always say I test better in foreign markets. Yeah, it's just I don't know what it is. It's just fine. It's all good.
So I completely hear you and see you in that, and I've never seen that kind of really truthfully referenced.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
It was fantastic.
Coffee and this, I'm in. Let's go. So I really think it's a special story that I'm really proud to tell. And of course, when you start writing these projects, that people call them like vanity projects. I'm like, oh, it's your like vehicle. And I was like, yeah, it's my story, but I don't care if this movie gets made on an iPhone. I want this movie to have been made as part of my career because I want certain women at a certain point in their lives to see this movie.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I was given such a gift. I got my life back by learning these lessons. And I see a lot of women that are just like stuck and they don't know why. And I'm like, it's because you've been fed a lot of really bad narratives and you just need this one thing to wake you up. And I think it would help you live a life that is like, that is coursed by you, that you aren't in a maze that you didn't pick or didn't design. And I think we don't always realize when we're in those mazes. And I don't care if you got married at 21 or you get married at 45 or you never get married. It's not about that. It's about like what gets prescribed to us and then what we accept. And I was like, you don't have to accept any of it. Yeah. And I think, so I just, and using the fairy tale narrative and then flipping it on its head with Chinese narratives, I was like, with like historic Chinese storytelling. There we go.
Also, I would like to call bullshit on the fact that you, as a woman, putting yourself in the center of something should be called narcissistic in any way or a vanity project in any way. Because if we don't see ourselves represented and we have a passion to put ourselves in something, that's power. That's not vanity.
And I will say it's like, a lot of people are like, well, like, people are hearing this, like, I'm like a white-bodied individual, you know what I mean? And it's like, never once would I ever be like, oh, well, there's so much diversity right now, there's no, like, there's, like, less demand or less roles for women like me. I'd be like, never in a million years. And, I see some people that are like...
I have heard that exact same thing,
and it really upsets me. And I was like, hey, two things. No. So I have television credits now, and I didn't when I got to town, and they're all opposite people of color. So space was made for me as an up-and-coming actress because the leads were people of color. Wow. And they were also directed by people of color. Wow. And so I was like, you're looking at this wrong. You know what I mean? But that's a whole other story. But that being said, why not, like, I should. I have it's like, if I do have any white privilege, then I should use it to, if I want this, I should tell my own story. And then along the way, I should also be like, are there people of color that I can empower along the way? Can I collaborate? Can I tell an intersectional story? And my hope is that that's what this is. Right. That it's not just like a white woman going to China finding herself. Like, I was like, no, it's actually, it's the opposite of a white savior story. Fingers crossed. That's not what I want at all. Right. I really hope that it's the young, the Chinese girl who saves me. The Chinese 8-year-old. Right. The literal girl. Yes. A Chinese child who doesn't speak any English is like, question mark. Yeah. I think, so I really, and I worked with a lot of projects and I've been mentored by a lot of storytellers that have really helped me, check in with my bias and then try to move around it, past it, or through it. And so, I think I've let go of most of my, like, I wrote a story about a middle-aged white woman that I'm trying to tell, you know what I mean? Yes. But I do think I'm hyper aware of it.
Well, and I think it's really important to be respectful and aware and see who's at the table and make sure everybody gets to be represented, but also we also get to be represented.
And I think sometimes those of us that are aware, like, I don't want to take up too much space, like, you know what I mean? Like, we're trying so hard, and it's like, no, you're still allowed. And like any of my, like, the people of color that I worked with, and I worked with on like a race podcast that I'm really proud of, and a few people, everyone's like, why, you don't, stop hiding behind that chair. Like, you're part of this discussion about race too. You have a race, you know what I mean? And so it's like, that really helped me just be like, that's not the move, is to like distance oneself. Like with Daniel Newman, he came to me and he wanted to make a movie about Alice Paul. But he wanted to make like a thing. Alice Paul was the suffragette who did the hunger strike that really kind of pushed what president was it, Wilson, to, you know, how we got 100 years of suffrage and 2 or 3 years ago. And he was like, there's apparently this cleaner in, like, when she was doing a hunger strike that Alice Paul slipped a note to, and that got to the press. So there was this cleaner, we don't know who it was, and Daniel was, what if that was a woman of color? Because Alice Paul historically sidelined women of color to get the job done, essentially, is what was a lot of people said, that she allowed some racists to put them in the back of the parade and all these other things. And so he was like, what if there was a woman of color in prison with her that called her out on that bullshit? Am I allowed to curse on your podcast?
Yeah.
So I was like, that's a really interesting story. But Daniel's a white-bodied man. I'm a white-bodied person. And we went to a few people that were like directors, and they were like, you guys aren't the people to tell this story.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, we know, but we're trying to tell the story, and we have money, and we want to tell the story.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I found a producer who I trust, my friend Joy, that I was like, I know you're not a filmmaker like we are. Would you guide? We want to do this. We want to do this right. Would you be our guide? And she helped me through some script rewrites, and I rewrote Daniel's first draft because he was like, he's like, I am not the person to write this, but this is the story. And I said, I see the story. Let me try to do a draft and direct it. And I worked with Joy, and then we found an amazing actress, Mary, who ended up playing the woman of color, and it was wonderful. And I'm like, people that were like, I don't want to touch this project with a 10-foot pole because I only see white people and it's like a black woman's story. I was like, okay, that's cool. You can do that. But we had $5,000 and a good idea, and we found a way to make it, and we worked intersectionally to do so, and we're proud of it.
Yeah.
And I was proud to share it with everybody. You know what I mean? And then like the Gina Davis Institute shouted it out at the Centennial. So like...
Wow.
Yeah, and perhaps people are, will comment on this and be like, you're too glib or whatever. But what I'm just saying is that, like, I don't think I don't want to touch that because it might be labeled as misguided in, like, this race conversation. I go, I don't think that's the move. That's not the move to protect yourself. It's the move is to lean in and be like, how can we make it better?
Well, and I think it's to advocate for the people that can be empowered and part of the story and create the thing that didn't exist.
And Mary was a jazz singer who hadn't done anything. She's this incredible actress. After the March, which is having a premiere in China soon, which I love because that's where Daniel is right now. Mary is this wonderful actress. She spends time here and in Germany, and jazz singer, and everyone's like, where'd you find her? And I was like, she hadn't acted on camera in a long time, like a really long time.
Wow.
So I'm so proud of that project. And it was made for like $5.
Wow.
Not exactly $5, but made in like one night of shooting,
That's incredible.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I very much am inspired by your passion to see something, but then also see it through to the end. Yeah. How do you like to think about kind of getting things to the finish line? Because you're so good at it.
Oh my God. Thank you for asking. I think it's probably something very broken inside of me that just fuels me to like work all night.
Okay.
And sacrifice self-care. I think it's sad. I think it's sad when things don't get finished.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just think you have to finish them, even if they're not perfect, if they're not your original vision. People show up and shoot things. You know what I mean? There's an alchemy to film. It's a script, and then it's people's energies, and it's energies on the day. And to not get something finished is to put all that in vain, and creativity is too special to do that with. Let it exist. If 10 people see it, so what? You don't know what's going to pay off down the road. And so if you get stuck, just take a break. Always take breaks. You don't have to finish something right away. If something is blocked and it's not getting done, it will find its way. I wanted to make A Woman Abroad, 4 years ago. But then we could have been shooting, and then the pandemic could have happened in the middle of production.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I'm a better writer now than I was back then because the script has gotten better. I'm a better director now, so I'm ready to direct it, where I wasn't 6 years ago.
Yes.
So the delay actually might have gifts in it. So if you could just see everything as like guided by the universe, thanks Los Angeles.
Yes.
And look for the gifts that are being offered to you in the delay.
Yeah.
It'll find its way into existence. But as creatives too, imagine doing a self-tape and not submitting it.
Oof. Yeah. Exactly.
You did all that work. But if you're blocked, there's a reason you're blocked, and you can take a look at it. But even if it gets uploaded with bad sound or a weird shot, but I think people just lose steam, or they see an obstacle and they're like, well, there's an obstacle. And I was like, is it an obstacle or is it a pivot? Is it an idea? Do you just cut that scene? Maybe you don't need that scene, that one last shot you need to get, or you don't get it and it's done. And then you can submit it. And yes, it may not get into every festival, but it's in some festivals, and your new idea will show up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everyone's like, why don't you make an easier film to shoot? And I was like, no, A Woman Abroad is the I call it the freighter trapped in the Suez Canal of my career. You know what I mean? I was like, everyone's like, don't you have other movies to make that would be easier? You could shoot like, you know, like at a friend's apartment. And I said, yes, I have those movies. Until I make this movie, I am doing nothing else because I want this.
Such a good visual.
Right. I was like, everyone's like, if I don't make this movie even on an iPhone, I cannot move forward creatively because I've given so much to it. And it's such... I want this as my first feature for a lot of reasons. And so, yeah, I'm just being really stubborn.
I love it. Well, and that's how things happen.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are like, Amy, shooting in Asia is hard. And I was like, yeah, you're right, it is hard. And then I was like, what? You haven't been to Shanghai. I lived in Shanghai. It's actually really easy. Yeah. Right. If you don't get permission and you go on a tourist visa, you're fine. So I was like, I realized I was listening to people that worked out of fear, worked out of restraint. And I was like, I work out of like bad decisions and I get pretty far with them. So
maybe they're good decisions.
I'm just saying we got a lot of good footage in Shanghai and I didn't have a film permit.
Yeah.
And I had a tourist visa still. So yeah.
Perfect.
We'll see. Hopefully we get to go back and shoot more in Shanghai, but we can shoot the rest here if we need to.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so for every episode, I ask my guest for a creator's challenge that the audience could do in 10 minutes or less of just anything they could do for free with the resources that they have to create an idea to go from 0 to 1 or to move an idea that they have along. And I feel like you're so good at all of those things. Yeah. You could go any direction with this.
I love it. Okay, let's make it like on theme. So was there a time limit? They have to be able to do it in a certain amount of time?
Like roughly 10 minutes. Just roughly 10 minutes. So it's not too big. It's like a tiny bite.
I want a tiny bite. I think what I want to challenge people, because everybody can edit on their iPhones or an iMovie, whatever PC version you have. Sorry, I'm a Mac person. I want to record someone telling you a 2-minute story. So I don't care what it is. Just like this funny thing happened to me. And then I want you to go film stuff around the world. And I want you to combine the two to make a little film. Right? So think about French New Wave style, that like the person talking is never on camera, or if they're on camera, they're not talking. I want you to use narration, and then I want you to go use B-roll, as we call it, and see if a movie comes out of that. And you'd be surprised. It will be a movie.
That's such a good idea.
And then just steal some music and put it underneath and get really excited, because score makes everything so cool. Like score and sound effects go so far, and those are free on the internet. So I want it to be like, I want you to underestimate the final product and then be pleasantly surprised by what you made.
Yeah.
And also what you're hearing and what you're seeing don't have to be the same thing. And anybody can do that. And I think, yes, that's
such a good idea. Yeah. And then tag me, please.
Oh yeah, tag all of us, please.
Yeah.
And also, whenever you win an Oscar or a Cannes Award, be like, you're welcome.
Yeah, yeah. Co-producers right
here, exactly. But I think, I want you to just go take the story and then go film some stuff out in the world. And some tricks, like everyone thinks they have to do pans or zooms. No. Hold the camera like you're doing a photo essay. So treat your sequence like a photo essay. So hold your camera steady. If you're doing a computer sequence, then get the mouse tight, get the keyboard tight, get the computer tight, and then sequence them together in the edit. Don't try to like whip your phone around. I think a lot of people try to do that, and I was like, you're gonna be frustrated because it's not gonna feel like a movie. But if you just have locked off shots or just little handheld shots and hold them steady in all the things that you wanna focus on, almost like a photo essay, but things are moving in it, you'd be surprised how fast it starts to look like a movie.
Oof, that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you. And where can people find you online and follow what you're doing?
Okay, great. So there's Instagrams that I deleted Instagram from my phone. I haven't been using it as much. I'm so much happier.
Good.
So, but I do update it occasionally. So, my Instagram is Amy C. Kersten, like at Amy C. Kersten. And then A Woman Abroad Film is the handle. And if you go to Amy C. Kersten, I link to the Woman Abroad Film, and we're going to put some updates there about recent stuff we've done and what we're trying to do next, which is cool. And so that's my Instagram. And then I am on TikTok, and I put some shorts and stuff on there that are pretty ridiculous.
And watch your...
Watch A Case of Emergency, and also if you need an editor for any of your projects. I love working with actors, love working with creatives. I always say I'm a very reluctant capitalist, so my prices are very low. Yes, because I don't like it when people spend too much money on their creative endeavors. They should be able to... I like the barrier of entry to be lower if possible.
I think that's, I really appreciate your passion for helping people get over the finish line.
Yes, thank you. Oh, and I'm randomly the host of a Netflix Kids podcast.
What?
Called Popcorn Brainstorm, which you can go watch.
Adorable.
You can go watch. And I am a trivia host for Netflix movies that are like, for like kids related. So
I love your blend of things.
It just all kind of rolls together. Yeah. Anyway, so you can go listen to me on Popcorn Brainstorm if you want to listen to something with your kids in the car, you know, that kind of thing.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Wow. You contain multitudes.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. It's just fun to see it.
Oh, well, thanks. Thanks for letting me be seen today.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on everything you're doing.
Thank you for reading the script. I'm like so touched.
Oh, absolutely. It's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
I loved reading it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I am a fan. Join the community and share your creative challenges on Instagram and Facebook at Creators Cafe by Kika Labs. And also check out my website, kikalabs.com, KIKALABS.com, to sign up for the mailing list so you always know when a new podcast is released, and to check out my coaching and digital courses to help you be a more confident and joyful creator.